Welcome to our first night of our story, The Sorceress, The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel by Michael Scott. Chapter 1. I think I see them. The young man in the green parka standing directly beneath the huge circular clock in St. Pancras Station took the phone away from his ear and checked a blurred JPEG on the rectangular screen. The English magician had sent this image of a couple of hours ago. Date stamped June 4th, 11:59. Its colors washed and faded. The grainy picture looked like it had been taken by an overhead security camera. It showed an older man with short gray hair, accompanied by two fair teens climbing on to a train. Rising up on his toes, the young man scanned the station, for the trio he'd briefly glimpsed. For a moment, he thought he'd lost them in the milling crowd, but even if he had, they wouldn't get far. One of his sisters was downstairs, and another was on the street outside, watching the entrance. Now where had the old man and the teenagers gone? Narrow pinched nostrils flared as he sorted through the countless scents in the station. He identified and dismissed the mixed stink of two main humani, the myriad perfumes and deodorants, the gels, the pastes, the greasy odor of fried food from the station's restaurants, the richer aroma of coffee, and the metallic, oily tang of the train engines and carriages. Nostrils opened unnaturally wide as he closed his eyes and tilted his head back. The odors he was seeking were older, wilder, unnatural. There, mint, just the merest suggestion. Orange, no more than the vaguest hint. Vanilla, little more than a trace. Hidden behind small rectangular glasses, his blue-black pupils dilated. He sniffed the air, tracing the gossamer threads of scent through the vast train station. He had them now. The older man from the image on his phone was striding down the station concourse, directly toward him. He was wearing black jeans and a scuffed leather jacket, and carried a small overnight case in his left hand. And just as in the picture taken earlier, he was followed by two blonde teenagers, alike enough to be brother and sister. The boy was taller than the girl, and they both wore backpacks. The young man snapped a quick picture with his cell phone camera and sent it to Dr. John D. Although he had nothing but contempt for the English magician, there was no point in making an enemy of him. D was the agent of one of the more senior and certainly the most dangerous of all the Dark Elders. Pulling the hood of the green parka over his head, the young man turned away as the trio drew near him and dialed his sister, who was waiting downstairs. "It's definitely Flamel and the twins," he murmured in the phone, speaking the ancient language that had eventually become Gaelic. "They're heading in your direction. We'll take them when they get onto Easton Road." Snapping his phone shut, the young man in the hooded parka set off after the alchemist and the American twins. He moved easily through the early afternoon crowd, looking like just another teenager, anonymous and unnoticed in his sloppy jeans, scuffed sneakers, and overlarge coat, his head and face concealed by a hood, eyes invisible behind the dark glasses. Despite his appearance, however, the young man had never been remotely human. He and his sister had first come to this land when it was still joined to the European mainland. and for generations they had been worshipped as gods. He bitterly resented being ordered around by Dee, who was after all nothing more than a Hamani. But the English magician had promised the hooded boy a delectable prize. Nicholas Flamel, the legendary alchemist. Dee's instructions were clear. The boy and his sister could have Flamel, but the twins must not be touched. The boy's lips twisted. His sisters would easily capture the twins, while he would have the honor of killing Flamel. A coal-black tongue darted out of the corner of his mouth to lick his lips at the thought. They would feast off the alchemist for weeks, and of course they would keep the tastiest morsels for their mother. Nicholas Flamel slowed, allowing Sophie and Josh to catch up with him. Forcing a smile, he pointed to the 30-foot-tall bronze statue of a couple embracing beneath the clock. "It's called the meeting place," he said loudly, and then added in a whisper, "We're being followed." Still smiling, he leaned into Josh and murmured, "Don't even think about turning around." "Who?" Sophia asked. "What?" Josh said tightly. He was feeling nauseous and dizzy. His newly awakened senses were overwhelmed by the scents and sounds of the train station. A throbbing headache pulsed at the base of his skull, and the light was so bright he wished he had a pair of sunglasses. "Yes, what?" is the better question, Nicholas said grimly. He raised a finger to point to the clock, as if he were talking about it. "I'm not sure what's here," he admitted. "Something ancient. I felt it the moment we stepped off the train." "Felt it?" Josh asked, disoriented, getting more confused by the second. He hadn't felt this sick since he got heat stroke in the Mojave Desert. A tingle, like an itch. My aura reacted to the aura of whatever is here. When you have a little more control of your own auras, you'll be able to feel the same. Tilting her head back, as if she were admiring the metal and glass lattice-work ceiling, Sophie slowly turned. Crowds swirled around them. Most seemed to be locals, commuters, though there were plenty of tourists, many stopping to have their pictures taken in front of the meeting place statue or with the huge clock in the background. No one seemed to be paying her and her companions any particular attention. "What will we do?" Josh asked. He was starting to feel panicked. "I can boost Sophie's powers," he babbled, "just like I did in Paris." "No," Flamel snapped, gripping Josh's arm with iron fingers. "From now on, you can only use your powers as an absolute last resort. As soon as you activate your aura, you will alert every elder, next generation, and immortal within a 10-mile radius to your presence. And here in England, just about every immortal you encounter is allied with the Dark Elders. Also in this land, it could awaken others, creatures best left sleeping." "But you said we were being followed," Sophie protested. "That means Dee already knows we're here." Flamel urged the twins to the left, away from the statue, hurrying them toward the exit. "I would imagine there are watchers in every airport, seaport, and railway station across Europe. Although Dee might have suspected that we'd head to London, the instant either of you activates your aura, he'll know for certain." "And what will he do then?" Josh asked, turning to look at Flamel. In the harsh overhead lights, the new lines on the alchemist's forehead and around his eyes were sharp. Flamel shrugged. "Who knows what he is capable of doing? He is desperate, and desperate men do terrible things. Remember, he was on top of Notre Dame. He was prepared to destroy the ancient building just to stop you. prepared to kill you to prevent you leaving Paris. Josh shook his head, confused. But that's what I don't understand. I thought he wanted us alive. Flamel sighed. D is a necromancer. It is a foul and horrible art that involves artificially activating a dead body's aura and bringing that body back to life. Any icy coldness washed over Josh at the thought. You're saying he would have killed us and brought us back to life? Yes, as a last resort. Flamel reached out and squeezed the boy's shoulder gently. Believe me, it is a terrible existence, the merest shadow of life. And remember, D saw what you did, so he now has some inkling of your powers. If there were any doubts in his mind that you are the twins of legend, they have vanished. He has to have you. He needs you. The alchemist poked Josh in the chest. Paper rustled beneath his shirt. In a cloth bag hanging around his neck, Josh carried the 2 pages he tore from the codex. And above all else, he needs those pages. The group followed the signs for the Eastern Road exit and were swept along by a crowd of commuters heading in the same direction. I thought you said there would be someone to meet us, Sophie said, looking around. Saint Germain told me he'd try and contact an old friend, Flamel muttered. Maybe he couldn't get in touch. They stepped out of the ornate red brick train station onto Eastern Road and stopped in surprise. When they left Paris just over 2.5 hours ago, the skies had been cloudless, the temperature already creeping into the 70s. But in London, it felt at least 10 degrees cooler, and it was raining hard. The wind whipping down the road was cold enough to make the twins shiver. They turned and ducked back into the shelter of the station, and that was when Sophie saw him. A boy in a green parka with the hood pulled up, she said suddenly, turning to Nicholas and concentrating fiercely on his pale eyes. She knew that if she looked away, she would involuntarily glance at the young man, who had been hurrying after them. She could still see him from the corner of her eye. He was loitering close to a pillar, staring at the cell phone in his hand, fiddling with it. There was something wrong about the way he was standing, something unnatural, and she thought she caught the faintest scent of spoiled meat on the air. Her nose wrinkled. Closing her eyes, she concentrated on the odor. It smells like something rotten, like roadkill. The smile on the alchemist's face grew strained. Wearing a hood? So that's who's been following us. The twins heard the slightest tremor in his voice. Except he's not a boy, is he? Sophie asked. Nicholas shook his head. Not even close. Josh took a deep breath. Well, then, do you want me to tell you that there are now 2 more people wearing green hooded parkas, and they're both heading this way? 3? Flamel whispered, in horror. We've got to go. Grabbing the twins' arms, he pulled them out into the sleeting rain, turned to the right, and dragged them down the street. The rain was so cold it took Josh's breath away. Pellets of hard water stung his face. Finally, Flamel pulled both twins into an alley out of the downpour. Josh stood, catching his breath. He brushed his hair back out of his eyes and looked at the alchemist. Who are they? He demanded. The hooded ones, the alchemist said bitterly. D must be desperate and more powerful than I thought. If he can command them, they are the Janai Kakalati. Great, Josh said. That tells me everything I need to know. He looked at his sister. Have you ever heard? He began and then stopped, seeing the expression on her face. You have. Sophie shivered as the Witch of Endor's memories flickered at the edges of her consciousness. She felt something sour at the back of her throat, and her stomach twisted in disgust. The Witch of Endor had known the Genii Cacolati, and she had loathed them. Sophie turned to her brother and explained, Flesh eaters. Alright guys, well that leads us to chapter 2. We will continue chapter 2 tomorrow. And for tonight, have a good night, and I hope you enjoyed this story. Bye.